When I was about 14, it was the first time I ever was arrested, and I was arrested basically for uh, fighting with my father. And maybe I'll get into that some other time. If you're really interested in what my relationship with my father and how it turned out to be, you can check out my blog. It's at the So if you want to check out my blog and hear more about like what my dynamics with my father, and I'll probably do a vlog about it eventually. But if you do, click this link. It's going to take you to my blog, um, where I kind of go more into depth about like how I came to be an atheist and kind of just my whole upbringing. So, anyways, so when I was 14, I got arrested. I spent a couple days in juvenile detention out here. Seth, if anyone gives a shit. Um, and when I was released, my father told me that he thought I needed some. I would assume motherly love is what I would assume, and he brought me to his mom's house, my grandmother's, and he left me there. Uh, I mean, literally, that was the last time I saw him for probably about a year. Actually, I don't even think I saw him after that. Probably closer to when I was 18 after that. And So, anyways, after about a year of kind of, butting heads with my poor grandmother who's trying to take care of me, one of my other family members gets wind that I've been kind of abandoned. Uh, Calls Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services comes out and calls my father, calls my mother. Pretty much says to my mother that she's gonna get charged with abandonment if she doesn't take me in. And then about after a couple months of living with my mom and having more chaos there, eventually, with being on probation for being arrested the first time, I ended up in CPS custody. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a kid who did not have parents. I'm not a kid who had, a, parents who were incapable of taking care of me, incapable of taking care of me, incapable of taking care of me. So, honestly, I guess, look, for me judging myself, I'm not gonna say that I was like, I'm not gonna say that I was a good kid. In fact, I would go as far as to say that I was probably a pretty big pain in the ass when it came to being a child. Um, I was, I had butted with authority, and I experimented with drugs, and I really didn't pay too much attention in school. And there was just like a lot of family chaos. And anyways, but I do think, and like I said, this is my opinion. I'm sure my family's opinion is different, but I kind of feel like they did abandon me. It was kind of just like, well, this is a little too much work for us, and we didn't, if you're just like a moderately decent child, we'll raise you. But if there's any kind of real issue, I mean, I feel like I was interfering with their lives. My father and my mother, at the time, were both getting remarried, starting over, and honestly, I think that they were just they didn't really want kids anymore. They wanted to try, they were so wrapped up in their kind of like repair from the divorce that they kind of pushed us aside. Uh, anyway, so this is supposed to be a story about CPS. That's right. So I wanted to talk about little one thing that happened to me in CPS, and I'm going to have a lot of stories about CPS because um, CPS, a lot of times, I think a lot of people are like, well, if it's that bad at their house, at least CPS will at least give them. CPS is almost worse than being with a neglectful parent because it is like being with a neglectful parent. It's like being with a neglectful parent that really has no tie to you except for financial. In other words, that's their job. Uh, so what they do with you is first of all they took me from my mom's after I went to court and my mom was like, oh well, I can't handle him. They put me back in jail, not because I broke the law, not because I mean, other than like I'm difficult. In other words, like I didn't go to bed on time or like I stayed out too late, kind of things. um So they took me to jail. I spent about a week in jail just because of the fact that there was no shelter room available for, there was no spot for me in a house, in a shelter. Now, when you go into CPS, you start off in a shelter, and eventually you move to what is called a group home. So in other words, when you're in the shelter, it's literally like what it sounds like. It's a house with a bunch of fucking beds, a bunch of kids, no real control, no real. The staff are probably the most incompetent. Like, obviously, I don't know how they test for people to take care of children, or it's contracted out, obviously, from what I saw. In other words, like, there would be someone with a house, and they would say, well, I'm not making any money renting this house, so maybe I can get some tax incentives and get some bodies in here if I turn it into a shelter for kids. Now, the first house I went to was probably, I live in a one-bedroom apartment. Probably the house was probably as big as my apartment. I think there was about 8 kids in it, running completely crazy. These kids had no clothes. There really was barely any food. I remember one of the staff members would have to come in the morning to bring us breakfast, and sometimes they wouldn't show up. Sometimes they just wouldn't show up. Seriously. I remember one of the staff members. We smoked weed together a lot. Dude, seriously, it literally was like, sit down and watch your stories on your TV and fucking just let these kids run around crazy. One of the kids had like I had a trench coat at the time when I was younger, like a green military trench coat. I wasn't like, I mean, obviously it was my little way of being different or whatever, but I wasn't, I wasn't like gothic or anything. I just thought that a full trench coat was cool. And one of the kids had eventually, like, I guess after I left, had taken my stuff and turned it into like some kind of like robbery kit with like a Jason mask. Like, not even like a hockey mask, like a Jason mask, like one of those Halloween glow in the dark ones. Anyways, but yeah, it was on oh man, I want to say Blythe and 14th Street. It's like Central Phoenix. But yeah, it was a shithole. No food. And then eventually I'd run away from these shelters because, it was worse. At least if I ran away, I would be around people who were, I don't know. And it was depressing, and it was, you're away from your parents, and you're with these people who obviously don't care for you very much. The kids you're with are all damaged and aggressive, it was a really hard time for me. That's just the first halfway house. Now, what happened was I ended up leaving. Like I said, I ran away with this one of the other dudes who lived there. It was like kind of like another normal kind of kid like me. And when I say that, like, he's just a guy who liked to party. That's pretty much how I saw myself. I never really was like a violent person to other people. I never started shit. I never robbed anybody. I just liked to get high because life to me was boring or painful. So, anyways, I ended up leaving, and this is another thing. They don't like, when you like run away from a shelter, they don't like, you eventually call CPS, they come and get you, they put you in another fucking shelter, and then the same thing happens again. But yeah. So, in conclusion, don't always necessarily think that CPS is like a good place for children. It's definitely a dilapidated. If you wanted to know, if you wanted to see something other than, I mean, you could point out education as to why a statism society is bad. But if you really want to see, like, oh, well, the public sector and private sector, you should see how fucking the state runs CPS, because it's like a crack house. It literally is like a crack house. I'm not even like making a metaphor. Like, they literally sent us to a crack house. And I got more stories. Join me next time. I will tell you about a staff member that stalked me in his car for a couple weeks when I was about 15. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope this doesn't sound too like self-centered, because I'm talking about myself a lot. Let me know what you think. Let me know if anyone else has had any other experiences about like child protective custody out here in America. I live in Arizona, so maybe it's a little different in other places. Maybe my experience is different than others. That's all I got to see. That's all I got to see. That's all I got to say. Peace.